$1.40 per mile and 51 cents per minute. That is the number that the council has decided is necessary to make at minimum $15.50. I'm going to take the averages from Minnesota to determine how close to $15.50 this number really is. So in order to do that, there are three things that we really need to find out. We need to figure out how far does the average trip go in Minneapolis? How much time does the average trip take in Minneapolis? And how many rides per hour does the average driver take in Minneapolis? If we have those three things, we can apply the rate change that the council implemented and figure out how much the average driver would make per hour in Minneapolis. This is one of my favorite tools that I've discovered. It's called Google LM Notebook. It's an AI notebook that you feed it information, and based off of the information that you feed it, you can ask it questions. So I have fed it the Minneapolis report that analyzes the TNC driver pay and expenses just for Minneapolis, right? This is, let's see, how many rides were used in this study. So I want you to understand the scale of which this study was done. It says over 18 million Minnesota TNC trips were analyzed for this study, consistent of data from 2022 provided by Uber and Lyft. That's pretty massive. I wish it were 2023, but I don't know how they get their data. Well, that's a pretty massive amount. How did they get the data? I want to qualify the data a little bit, because I know people out there are going to say, you know, this is a scam, this is fake, this was paid for by Uber, and that could be the case, but this is the best thing that I've found. And if you have something better, you let me know. This is the data was provided by DLI, by Uber, and Lyft. What is the average trip length in Minneapolis? The average trip length of a TNC ride in the Twin Cities metro of Minneapolis, Minnesota was 14.64 minutes. How many miles is the average trip? The average trip length in miles, 7.87. All right. So we have the average trip time of 14 minutes. The average miles is 7.87. And now we need to figure out what's the average amount of rides that are taken per hour. How many rides does a driver average per hour? Okay, so it says on average, a Minnesota TNC driver logged an estimated 2.37 trips per hour. So we have the three things that we need: average time for a ride, average miles, and average rides per hour. So the average for time is 14 minutes, 64 seconds, I guess, kind of. The average for miles is 7 miles. We'll round it up to 8. We'll round all these numbers. The average trip is 15 minutes. I'm going to call it 15 minutes, round it up. The average miles is 8 miles. And we're not going to round up the average rides, 2.36, because 2.36 is vastly different than 3. So we're not going to touch that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to Bard to help us do some math. So we're going to say, consider the average ride lasts 15 minutes and goes 8 miles, and a driver does 2.36 rides per hour. How much would a driver make per hour? And what we're going to do is we're going to use the pay rate that the council just passed as our litmus test. So this is what they make. I'm going to copy and paste this. What a driver make per hour if they were paid $1.40 per mile and 50 cents per minute. Let's see what it says. So it does the math for us, right? It says earnings from miles. I'm not going to go through that. We'll just go down here to the answer. It says, therefore, a driver would make approximately $44.53 based off of the information we gave it, right? Last time I did this, there was some feedback saying that I'm not accounting for time spent without a passenger. However, the average amount of rides per hour takes that into consideration already. So using this pay structure, someone would end up with $44.53 per hour. Now, I'm not saying that this is deserved or not deserved. I think that it's not sustainable, right? Especially not for Uber and Lyft. They have a lot of overhead. There is a chance that there is a company that can wiggle their way into the market and afford this, right? From a business perspective. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to have an impact on the supply and demand of passengers. Passengers might say, all right, this is a lot more money that we're having to pay, and we're going to opt to take the bus or whatever, right? That's still yet to be seen. I think that even with Lyft and Uber leaving, the thing that concerns me the most is that supply and demand. Is that, so for example, I'll bring it up here. Under the current pay model, drivers were averaging 2.36 rides per hour. However, if it's more expensive, that number could drop, right? So it could play around with this per hourly rate, and it's going to have an effect on it. And there's not going to be a real way to see unless we have like updated data after May 1st. So, there's only so much we can guess and think will happen. But I just want to point out that what the council believes will equate to $15.50 based off of this study with over 18 million rides, and specifically Minnesota, that would work out to $44.53. Just based off of that math. If you have holes in my math, let me know. I want to have the most accurate answer possible. And, we use the rides per hour. We use the average miles per ride, and we use the average time per ride, right? Those are just the averages. And based off of those the average driver will make $44.53 at minimum. This is the least that they would make. Of course, expenses aren't included in here. Everybody's expenses are going to be different. I don't think that anyone has a level of expense that will take them from $44 at minimum down to $15.50, right? Even if you had $20 worth of expenses per hour of operation, which is extremely high. Mine is about $8, and that's when I have to buy tires. It's extremely high. You would still be making $24.53 at minimum after expenses, right? I'm not going to sit here and judge what is deserved or what is not deserved. I'm simply highlighting that what the council thinks is necessary to make $15.50 does not equal $15.50, and it's not even close. That is all I'm highlighting right here. So a company that wants to come in has to operate on major thin margins. And even with that being said, I think the driver co-op has a shot, and I'm going to do my best to prove it.